On Instagram. We're on YouTube. No, we're not on Instagram. I'm on Instagram. You're on Instagram, but we're live on Facebook and we're live on YouTube. That's where we're doing this thing.
Already blowing it, bro. Already
blowing it. Already messing it up. I mean, listen, I'm just still trying to catch up from the past 2 weeks. It was quite a bit of stuff going on, and I've literally got kids outside the door like banging on doors. So
I could hear it.
But my guest today is Joshy G. Joshy G, what is up, man? How are you doing? I got to see you like in passing quite a bit at the CrossFit Games. But how you been, man? How's the past couple weeks been for you?
What's up, dog? Baba Booey to all of you listening out there in Facebook land, wherever this is being streamed. Great. The games were a blast as always, per every year. So yeah, just a busy guy when it comes to the CrossFit Games, running around, emceeing and hosting all the craziness that is the CrossFit Games. And I mean craziness in a very good way, obviously.
Yes, obviously. And we'll get to all the action. Like we'll talk about, let's just dive into the CrossFit Games and kind of how all that whole thing went. But before we do that, like how did you, this was your 10th year at the CrossFit Games?
11th, I believe. 10th was my last year. It would have been my 12th if it wasn't for 2020. But yeah,
sure.
I've been around, I think, the CrossFit space for 12 years officially.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how did you get into it? Like how did that come about? Like how did you become, one of the voices on the floor for CrossFit?
Long story short, back in the day, there was a gym that I worked at in Culver City, and they hosted a cancer charity fundraiser. And the main gym owner was on the microphone for the majority of the time. And so when it was his heat, I grabbed the microphone and I just started riffing and raffing, and all that good stuff. And a company by the name of Wad Gear, I don't think they're around anymore. They were like, hey, we're hosting an event. You did a really good job on the microphone. We would love to have you host our event. So I hosted that event with Kiki and this other girl, I believe her name was Marissa. And from there, that led to another thing. And then that led eventually to regionals at the time. And then from there, Kiki and I did such a great job at regionals that they invited us to partake in the CrossFit Games. I believe that was 2012. So, nice. But all the way back from 2012 on. So that's kind of the back of the box version of how all that happened.
Nice. And I love it. Dude, you bring such an energy out there on the floor. It's fantastic.
I don't know if you can hear me or not, but yeah, that's kind of how it all happened.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on 1 second, because I've got to deal with the beating at the door. So I'm going to, yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Uh-oh, I lost him. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I'm going to throw up a graphic for a second.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I'm going to throw up a graphic for a second and go deal with what's going on outside my door. And then we'll be right back. Hold on just a second.
All right. There you. Hello. Big thumbs up. Big thumbs up. For those of you that are still watching, possibly live on the Facebook.
All right. Sorry about that.
All right. No worries, buddy.
It's going to make for compelling video when people come back to watch. I hope you're keeping people.
Yeah. Well, I would just make a note. There's a 3-minute delay.
Yeah. No, it's good. And you're still at the door, which, we're going to let it roll. If you guys hear kids in the background, it's okay. There are older kids that are trying to deal with it, but it is the life of having 4 kids.
I hear you. I mean, I don't know what that's like, but I hear you.
Yeah. So, okay. So what I was saying, and I don't know if we lost connection or something, but you brought such an energy on the floor this year. It was just fantastic, dude. Like I was messaging you during it and some of your calls on the floor were just awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. Like I say, I like to have a good time while educating the audience and at the same time making whatever the event may be sound as exciting as possible. So that's
Yeah,
always my goal as a live event host, especially when it comes to the CrossFit Games, because it's the end all be all. It's the World Championship, it's the Super Bowl, it's the WrestleMania of CrossFit competitions. So you got to make it sound like it is the most important event on planet Earth when it comes to those particular events, or tests as they call them this year. So
absolutely. And I don't think even some people got some of the references that you were throwing out there.
that's
Because
okay. It's not for everybody. I mean, again, as long as it pops me or a
oh,
few other people, that's all that really matters.
I loved it because you talked about WrestleMania, and obviously there's a background with WWE. We're gonna talk about a little bit of that as well, like how you kind of got into that realm. But some of the the Roman Krenikov. I think I even messaged you. I was like, "Oh, you son of a bitch! That was such a good call on the floor," because I think you called him the head of the table when he was before he got injured and was still in the lead. Just kind of that Roman Reigns, Roman Krenikov call. I was like, that's just killer, and I don't think like maybe a percentage of the crowd got it.
Yeah, I always, like I said, try to have a good time and make it sound as much as a UFC or American Gladiators or wrestling as possible when it comes to those guys, giving them a little bit of personality. Not that they need my help by any stretch of the imagination, especially a guy like Roman Krenikov, who left the CrossFit Games well more beloved than he did going into it. But yeah, when a guy named Roman is destroying the competition and is ahead by so many points, it's very hard to not, in my particular brain, want to
Sure.
not reference Roman Reigns and his, unstoppable reign, pun
Yeah.
intended, as a, certified head of the table, your tribal chief. I definitely didn't use that one because I knew that wouldn't be
Sure.
applicable. But other than that, he was, for the most part of the weekend, the head of the table.
Yeah.
And, I thought it was most important for the audience at the CrossFit Games to acknowledge him. So
Actually, did you get to use that one? Because I know he got injured, and then there was kind of the whole story of him being injured and falling off the leaders and all that sort of stuff. Did you get to use that one? Because
use what? Acknowledge me?
the acknowledge me.
I'm sure I used it at some point. I don't know if I used it with him or somebody else, but at
Gotcha.
the end of the day, like when we found out that he hurt his leg, there wasn't really much to add to that other than to
Yeah.
make the audience realize, like, hey, there's a reason why this brother's doing single leg double unders. There's a reason why he's attempting to the best of his ability. I don't think everybody knew, even going into that event, that he was hurt,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I found out maybe 5 minutes before they came out.
Same.
So
I,
um
I was in the press pit or in the press area, and I had somebody lean over to me and goes, "Hey, rumor has it he may not even come out on the floor. Like he's underneath the tunnel in crutches right now, and there's a good chance he might not even come out."
yeah,
So
I was pretty sure that unless he was actually missing a foot, I think for the most part he was going to come out.
yeah,
That was never a thought in my head, but I didn't realize that he broke his foot until after.
yeah. And did you see the pictures after?
I
Just
definitely didn't see the pictures after.
oh, it's gross. One of I think he did it on his story, so it's gone now. But one of the meme pages posted a picture and was like, when your sixth grader or like when your elementary school kid draws somebody's foot, and that's what it looked like. It's just this
Oh, I bet.
horribly misshapen thing.
Oh, I bet.
But so what was some of your favorite moments? Like I know when you're in it and you're emceeing and kind of taking part in the action and calling it, sometimes you do get to see, a little bit more than the average person. But what were some of your favorite moments from the games this year? What were some things that you really, really enjoyed?
I definitely enjoyed the Helena event just because how crazy fit those guys were. I attempted it shortly after the CrossFit Games and I got nowhere near even the slowest time or even the time cap. So the fact that, Adler finished it so fast, so quickly is amazing to see. I was a huge fan of the community 5K.
Mhm.
Uh, I think that was a really smart move on their part. Um, I love some of the I love I'm not trying to rub it in, Roman, but that
Yeah.
event that muscle up sandbag event was really, really cool. So they're, again, I think it's going into their 6th year at Madison. It's real hard for guys like Boz and Dave to come up with fun and interesting events, especially with the venue that they're given. And I think for 6 years, they did the best that they could with the campus, or the canvas, if you will, of Madison, Wisconsin. So I think my favorite event of all time last year was the one at the Capitol with the cheese wedge, or whatever you want to call it, that,
Yeah.
everyone remembers Rebecca Fuselier carrying that up the stairs. I think that one was a very fun, unique event just visually. But I think they did a really good job with it being the last year, and just kind of showcasing everything that Madison has to offer. Anytime that there's a bike involved, that there's going to be that could be a great equalizer, which I feel like it did. Hearing that Medeiros kind of fell off of his bike, that was no fun for anybody. I'm sure he didn't want to do that, but it's always fun that people train their entire CrossFit Games season not thinking about some of the elements that may happen, like falling off your bike, or like getting no reps 20 times, or like the music in the crowd, and this, then the other, the weather, being another factor, how hot it is sometimes out on that field. So it's really interesting when it comes down to game day, how these athletes adapt. And it's pretty cool to be as close as I am to the action, to see it happen live. But I'm sure for the folks in the stands, it's even more exciting, because not every day do they get to see these CrossFit superstars perform above and beyond all expectations.
Yeah. And the field, man, it was hot.
Yeah.
Now I come from Florida, you come from California, like we know hotter temperatures. But on the field it's a little bit different. Like people don't quite understand how that field just radiates.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So
so you're out there, you're announcing all these calls. What, I mean, when you're out there and in the action, like how do you, like, do you and Kiki kind of have a system where you bounce back and forth, or you just kind of play by ear? You've been working with each other so long, it's just kind of.
Yeah, I think we don't have a system. It's not like we go in there and be like, all right, I'm going to talk and then you talk and I'm going to talk, you talk. I think we've been doing it for so long. Even I think that's the reason why we were picked back in 2012, is we were able to bounce back and forth with one another so well, where, guys like Dave and Justin at the time, Justin Berg, they were like, oh, I like this back and forth, because back then they only had one MC per, event or whatever. So, we were the first ones to kind of introduce that 2-person MC team when it came to regionals at the time. So we really just kind of listen to one another. I mean, obviously there are times where she'll talk over me or I'll talk over her. But I would say 99.9% of the time we're really listening to one another, so we don't repeat certain things or we don't step on each other. And it's just really a good flow when it comes to, when we're calling an event.
Yeah.
There's never, when it's really, really good, we give each other high fives and this, that, and the other. And for the most part, that's exactly what happens. So there's never been like an instance where I can remember where we walked away and we're like, oh, that was awful. I think we walk away being like, oh yeah, that was great. And again, it could be something as boring as 100 pull-ups for time. We do a really, really good job of making sure that those 100 pull-ups for time are the most exciting, fun, 7-8 minutes, whatever you want to call it, of the audience's, life. You're like, oh my God, that was a cool, exciting event, because those two on the floor made it. It might be different on TV. I can't speak for Woodland and, Chase or, Adrian Conway. Those guys do a great job, but they have a very different audience. They have a TV audience, so they have the stats and they have this and they have all these things that, whether they got to remember or they have it in front of them, they're playing to a completely different audience. I'm, trying to get people inside of an arena excited.
Yeah. And so what kind of prep goes into it? Because I know you get 80 names that you got to try and, negotiate and figure out and make sure that everything, that you're, saying certain names correctly and things like that. Like how does that go into it?
I think that's the most important thing. Obviously, we don't want to say anybody's names wrong. And I'm sure over the course of, doing it for 11 years, there's plenty of names I've gotten wrong. I know people have come up to me and said, hey, you said this wrong. You said that wrong. But the prep, I think, usually comes from emceeing the semifinals or the regional events back in the day, because you get to see all these people that actually qualify compete in other workouts. We also get, a huge information packet, and we'll definitely go through that. And if there is something, especially if it's like an Olympic lifting total, you want to know their clean and jerk max, you want to their snatch max. But you got to remember too, when it's something like that, we literally have 20 seconds. So it's not like we can sit there and do an entire monologue about, Annie Thorsdotter's clean and jerk PR and Annie Thorsdotter's snatch PR, because by the time they say lift, they've already completed their lift. So there's not really much to say. So you just kind of have to balance out, like, when is this information going to be important? Okay, there's a 12-minute event. We can talk about some interesting factoids then. But when it's something short like that, you just got to be quick, and it's mostly improv, if anything.
Gotcha. So that, kind of is your CrossFit Games, but like you also are the co-owner of Deadboys Fitness.
That is
So
correct.
tell me how that whole thing, I mean, that's a whole nother side that you run, and like, how does that run? Obviously, when you are away and doing things, like the CrossFit Games and stuff like that.
I run it while I'm away. I mean, it's a great thing because I can do it mobily. So I program, I input all the information. I'm in charge of the social media. It's pretty much me. Colby or Seth is a face, and promotes it when he can. Obviously, he's got bigger fish to fry when it comes to his profession. He's the world heavyweight champion, going from town to town defending that bad boy. But he does the programming. He puts it over when he can, and but that's it. But luckily for me, it's a it's a job that I can do on the go. So when I'm at the CrossFit Games, I enter the workouts and I program and I try to get it done. There's not very much rest, especially on those weeks. Everybody thinks like, oh, you want to go party, you want to go do this, you want to go do that. And that's the exact opposite of what I want to do. It's either if I work from the morning to the evening, I want to sit in silence for at least a couple of hours, and then I have more work to do before I can go to bed and then repeat the day. So that's how that works.
So for those who don't know, tell what Deadboys Fitness is, and like it's not a location. It's
Deadboys Fitness
programming.
is it's an online program. It's usually geared towards wrestling fans, but there are a bunch of functional fitness or CrossFit fanatics that do it. It is a program that is modeled after the CrossFit model. Most of our workouts are CrossFit workouts. We are an affiliate, so we are officially an affiliate, and we also offer.
And you're an L2, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And we also offer other styles of programming within our brand. So we do have CrossFit workouts. We have bodyweight CrossFit workouts. We have Olympic lifting, strength, conditioning, and as well as like functional bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. And the whole goal behind it was at the beginning to get wrestling fans that are a little hesitant of jumping into the gym. And from there, this is going on, I believe, our 5th year. It has turned into the everyday average person. So obviously there are tons of online programs out there like a Street Parking or an Atom or, CompTrain or Hard Work Pays Off. And all of those are great. And I'm not trying to say that I'm trying to take those guys down. They have a very specific audience, and that's great. And that's awesome. And we're just there as an alternative to some of those. It's great because, as most people think like, oh, coaching and training Seth and Becky and Claudio, like that must be fun. And it is. And I have a bunch of, personal in-person clients, whether they be actors or musicians or CEO. Those are great. But I really get a kick out of helping the everyday average person. So seeing people, achieve a certain weight loss goal, or running a mile in a certain time, or completing a workout in a certain time, like that is the end all be all for me. And that's theoretically, why I got into the fitness space in the first place, was to help people become the best versions of themselves. I enjoy, the perks of being friends with a Seth Rollins or a Becky Lynch, but at the end of the day, like helping people become the best versions of themselves, which includes a healthier version, has always been my number one goal. And that's where I get the most kick, the most fun out of my profession. Obviously hosting stuff is a lot of fun, but it's not the everyday job. It's a it's like a cool side gig.
Yeah.
Helping people is what I love to do.
Well, and it's cool that Seth and Becky line up with it. Obviously it's things that they do, but that they, put a face behind it as well, because they could easily just do the programming and, and do the training and that sort of thing. But similar to, like CrossFit, the cool thing about CrossFit is you look at the CrossFit Games and you can take that and directly relate it to what you're doing in the gym. Whereas if, you're talking about wrestling fans, if you're looking in the ring, well, you're not going to take that and directly relate that to something in the gym. If you're a wrestling fan, you're not gonna be like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to, go to a wrestling gym and go do that. Whereas CrossFit, you kind of take that, you can take that fitness over, but then seeing people like, Seth and Becky doing CrossFit, it kind of bridges that gap. So that's a really cool thing to see, those type of fans come into the CrossFit world.
Well, I would say that, like, what Seth and Becky and other wrestlers do in the ring is very CrossFit related to a certain extent. I mean, they may not
Yeah.
be clean and jerking the Big Show up and overhead, but they are picking people off from off the ground, or they're doing a lot of gymnastic elements, a lot of interval training as far as spiking their heart rate up and then resting. So there's a lot of things that kind of mirror the CrossFit modalities, but in reality, like, I think when I say, like, I want the wrestling fans to get in shape, is because when I was growing up, let's just say, if there was a program that was like, you could do the same workouts as Shawn Michaels or Macho Man Randy Savage or Bret Hart or, Kurt Hennig or Mr. Perfect Razor Ramon, I would have jumped all over it. And these workouts that these guys are doing are the same exact workouts. Yes, it's not going to Gold's Gym and clanging and banging like some of the older wrestlers back in the day. This is high intensity functional training that constantly varies, and you're never going to get the same workout for quite some time.
Mhm.
And you don't have to spend hours in the gym. It's literally anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes, depending on your warm up and your cool down. And again, it's a community based app, Deadboys Fitness. So you have a whole community behind you that will really focus on lifting you up and making sure that they're holding you accountable. Unfortunately, we don't have a gym, a physical location, and that is why most of our cancellations are people that have decided, hey, look, I love this so much, I'm going to join a CrossFit affiliate, which is very bittersweet. Obviously,
Yeah.
we'd love them to stay a Dead Boys member for life, but man, there is nothing better than having a coach actually having eyes on you, being able to fix form, technique, and or push you a little harder than, let's just say, me, doing that via social media,
Yeah.
and so that's why, you know, I'm such a huge uh, fan of really, really good CrossFit gyms, because there are amazing CrossFit gyms. And I feel like every podcast I go to, I always say the same ones: CrossFit South Brooklyn, CrossFit Soul in Miami, Rising Wave here in El Segundo, West LA Athletics, Gambate, Cityside CrossFit. I mean, just those are the ones off the top of my head that really do a good job of not only cultivating an amazing community, but they have great coaches that will help you achieve those goals, and that will make sure that you are doing the movements properly, so they are not looking to have you get hurt or injured, which is why I believe certain CrossFit gyms give the CrossFit name a bad rep,
Yeah.
because they force you to go heavy without dialing form and technique. They force you to go hard and lift faster without properly scaling. And there's so much more to CrossFit than just clean and jerking, X amount of weight, or going hard, or WOD life, or 21-15-9, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, there's so much more to that. And again, I think there are amazing gyms out there that really focus and dial in the technique for their members, focusing on, hey, look, we want you to scale because this is what's best for you. And in return, by doing that, and these folks listening to them, they get the best results. And that is why, because the amazing coaching staff or the amazing community that these gyms cultivate.
Yeah. And I love that, literally having the conversation in the gym today with my coach. I was formerly an L1 and head coach of a gym, and I moved over to a new gym, and the coach there is, he has no problem scaling people back. He's like,
Yeah.
listen, I don't care how much you can put on your back and back squat. Actually, we were doing back squats today, and one of the guys asked, he's like, "Can you watch to make sure I go below parallel?" And he's
Mhm.
like, "If you're asking that question, you're probably not. Like, let's take some weight off and make sure that you're going down, getting down far enough." And the question was, what's the difference between a 200 and a 300-pound back squat? It's nothing. Yeah, there's the weight, but your form should be the same. If you get to the bottom of the squat, the only thing that's going to happen is you can't stand it up.
Hmm.
But you should be down low enough every single time because that's your form and that's what you're doing, and getting below parallel. And he's like, there's really no difference. Yeah, there's 100 pounds, but if your form is correct, you're going down to that depth. Then the only thing that happens is you just don't stand up.
Well,
Dump it off the back, and try it again, but your form has to stay the same whether you're going for a max or you're just going for reps. You got to make sure that your form is correct, and your form is on point. So I love that, because we had to scale him back, because this is one of those guys that just, he wants to go heavy, go heavy, go heavy, go heavy every single time he puts weight on the bar.
well, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So how, and I love what you said about, the people that you follow, and being able to say, oh yeah, I'm doing the same workouts as these guys, because I have pictures of me as like a 7-year-old kid with my Hulkamania gear. Like, I think my parents actually bought me a Hulkamania workout set, and it had like the headband and the shirt and the armbands with these little weights, and sitting there working out, to whatever, you know Hulk Hogan program they had in this little kids kit.
Mhm.
So, kind of, what was your start into WWE? And you definitely threw a whole laundry list of history people out there.
I mean, look, when I was in elementary school, I believe that's when it was. I mean, I watched it when I was really, really young, but I, didn't remember or know enough to, attain it. But when I was in elementary school, all my friends were watching it, so I finally was like, all right, I guess I got to start watching this. So I rented SummerSlam '91 and was hooked, and then went back and retroactively watched all of the tapes all the way up to at least all the pay-per-views all the way up until SummerSlam '91. And then I think the very first pay-per-view that I made my family purchase was Survivor Series '91. But I think SummerSlam '91 was the one that got me hooked, and then from there, I was I was a big time wrestling fan. So all the way since '91, I think I've been watching it religiously, sometimes on and off. I think there were a couple of years where I would catch Monday Night Raw every other Monday, but for the most part, I would say since '91, I've been watching it.
Yeah. Currently, so I was kind of the same way. Like, when I was a kid, I started, I was watching it, and kind of in my teens and early 20s, and then just kind of stopped paying attention, and fell away from it. And the cool thing is that my 10-year-old has now gotten into it. You met her at semifinals, and she got into it, and she's like, "Oh, Dad, you need to watch this. You need to watch this." And and I've just sit down and just kind of enjoying time with my kid,
Yeah,
and started watching it, started getting into the stories, started kind of getting into the whole art of it. It is definitely an art form. And getting to spend time with my kid and watch something super entertaining. And also, we were both very physical. She's a CrossFit gymnast. She does all this stuff, but now she loves wrestling. So getting to watch that with her has been kind of a really special time, and really cool to kind of get back into all that.
that's great.
uh so it was cool, actually. And I know Seth popped into the games, and I got to run into him and you at the tier booth, because he's a big tier fan.
Yeah,
And he, was nice enough to do a little video for Stella,
well,
and
that's great.
just literally blew her mind. I got home and showed it to her, and like, she, like, jaw on the floor, like, couldn't believe it.
Hmm.
It was awesome. Um, but what are so what are obviously you do activations with Dead Boys as well, because I see you guys doing stuff in gyms and things like that. So, like, how often do you do that? And do you do different locations just based on wherever you're going to be, or how does that
So
work?
we usually do them on the big four pay-per-views. So they are Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, WrestleMania, and Survivor Series. And so we couldn't have done it this year because SummerSlam and the CrossFit Games were the same weekend.
Yep.
But depending on the location of those events, that's where we usually have them. So we started it back in Survivor Series of, I don't know what year it was, but it was in Houston. And from then on, we've been doing it for the most part, every big pay-per-view. So WrestleMania was in Hollywood. We had one here in Hollywood. I think Royal Rumble, or was Royal Rumble? San Antonio. We had one in San Antonio. Those were the last two that we did. Survivor Series. We were going to do one in Boston, but that was because the pay-per-views turned to Saturdays instead of Sundays. It makes it a little bit tricky. So if it works in the schedule, we usually end up doing them, and we usually end up doing them on those big pay-per-view days.
And so how do people get involved in that? Is that kind of like,
We
everybody in the
usually make an
community just jumps in?
announcement. Yeah,
Yeah.
we usually make an announcement on social media. But yeah, all you do is you sign up. You think of it as almost like a beginner's CrossFit, your first CrossFit workout. A lot of times, a lot of people will join that are very CrossFit savvy. So we'll scale it to their abilities to make it a little bit more difficult. But
Mhm.
there's usually, they come in, there is a warm up. We talk about the workout. They ask questions. We do the workout. They'll sometimes do it with Seth. And then afterwards, there's a cool down, a Q&A. We take photos. We give them a cool gift bag. So it's a fun, like they earn their autograph with Seth, or they earn their picture with Seth. Which makes it a little bit more interesting than your normal like autograph meet and greet that you would pay WWE or one of these autograph brokers
Yeah.
like a Comic-Con or whatever. Not that there's anything against that. That's great, but you
Sure.
only get to spend maybe 5 minutes, if that, with them. Whereas here, you get to spend an hour, and hopefully, you are motivated to either join Deadboys Fitness or join a gym. And 9 times out of 10, most people either join Deadboys Fitness or a CrossFit gym because they're like, oh my gosh, this was so much fun. Maybe they heard bad things about CrossFit and then they actually do a class and they're like, oh, this is not as bad as I thought, or oh, this was way more fun. And then the ultimate goal, like Deadboys Fitness, is hoping that the fitness bug is bit and they join a gym, or they want to make strides to improve their life. So if it's not gym, maybe eating a little bit better, or maybe being a little bit more active. Maybe instead of watching 10 hours of TV, maybe they're only watching 5 and they're going for walks around the block, 3 times versus 0 times.
Yeah. And so Dead Boys, is it just the workout portions, or do you do fitness, or not fitness, nutrition as well with that?
Usually if they you mean on the app? I mean, we have had some nutritional challenges. There's no official nutrition template. But when people come to the Dead Boys Day with the Dead Boys events, they usually ask or have nutrition questions, which we're gladly happy to answer, but there is no official nutritional element to Dead Boys. Like I said, we do have nutritional challenges every now and then, but nothing that is a full staple of Dead Boys.
Gotcha. I love it. I mean, just the whole vibe and everything that I see that you're putting out on social media has been just awesome. Awesome content. Awesome to see the community get together. That's really the biggest thing, for me, and the reason I love going to the games and going to like Wadapalooza and different places like that is to see the community element. And it's cool because with the posts that you post for Dead Boys, like it's not just these jack dudes coming in there and working out. It is the mom and pop. It is the the people that are completely out of shape that are finally walking into a gym to do something and make a difference. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, man, that's what makes those events. And when people drop into the gym that I'm currently at, Rising Wave, it is what makes it the most fun. And like I said, I can't preach enough. As much as I enjoy my celebrity clients, whether they be Seth and Becky or others, but like I said, helping the everyday average person is always, even since the start of my coaching career, has always been the most fun and the most satisfying.
Yeah. So did Dead Boys come out of you kind of having the celebrity clients and that sort of thing? Like, did that
To
is
a
that
certain
how that?
to a certain extent. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be getting DMs from people back when, I started training with Seth, was like, hey, what's his programming? What's his programming? What does he do? What does he do? So we just were like, hey, let's just put it out there. Dead Boys officially started when, the CrossFit Games at the time had the team series. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it
Yep.
was basically like an open, but in a team format. So they would release, 2 or 3 workouts and you would do them all within the course of the weekend. So I would go on the road with Colby and we would do these team series events, and we would try our best to turn it into very pro wrestling, but no one really bit. I mean, maybe the Buttery Bros, I think.
Yeah.
But that's where we just took that name from the team series and transferred it over to the programming that you see today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how did you like, you were training before, but how did you like originally get into like the CrossFit like space? Like, because
I was
we kind of did the jump from, you were just training celebrities, did Dead Boys, but like how did that whole thing start with you training?
I've always been a gym fanatic. My dad took me to the gym at an early age. So it was more like a clang and bang brother. And then my buddy Nate, he was doing triathlons. He was like, "Hey, I bet you could do a triathlon." So I started doing triathlons and they were fun, but man, the training for a triathlon is very rigorous and very boring.
Yeah.
You'd spend your weekends riding long hours on a bike or going for long runs or spending, hours at a pool. And I had a friend named Jonas who also was a triathlete, but he was doing these crazy amounts of time or these crazy times. And I know that he wasn't putting in that much work. Not that when I say that much work, like he wasn't biking for hours or he wasn't running for hours. And I asked him what his secret was. And he said, "Oh, I've been doing CrossFit as a supplementation to my triathlon training, especially something called CrossFit Endurance, which I don't know if it's still around, but that was a thing at the time." And
Hmm.
so I joined a CrossFit gym here in LA and I was hooked ever since. So I started supplementing my CrossFit training with my triathlon training. I was cutting my triathlon training times in half because of the things that I was learning at CrossFit and CrossFit Endurance. And it helped me achieve better times in my triathlons and in my like half marathon. And then it got to a point where I'm like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to train to be a triathlete, even though it was very fun at the time. I was enjoying more of the CrossFit style training. And so I just transitioned to that.
Yeah, and that's kind of a similar story with me. I was running, I was doing, runs, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons. Actually, I did one half marathon. I got done with it, and I realized I just never want to do this again. It's
Yeah.
just this is just boring. This is not, yes, it's a challenge, but man, so much time, devoted to it. You got to put in, those hours on the road.
Yeah. I don't mind the long distance run every now and then. I don't like them every weekend. So
Dogs going nuts.
yeah.
Um, yeah, if you've heard the growling, like I've heard the growling, like throughout the episode. But yeah, so and that was, I was doing the run, I was doing, I was starting to get into like bikes and things like that, and started doing CrossFit. And then after doing CrossFit for a few months and not running at all, signed up for a 5K and PR'd my 5K.
That's
Like
great.
without running, for months on end, but just doing CrossFit training. So I love the fact that it is versatile and kind of get you anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, well, cool, man. How can people get in touch with you, Dead Boys?
Great question.
Get hooked up on it.
Uh, I'm on the Instagram at Joshy, Joshy Gallegos, uh, and also at Deadboys Fitness. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me is via Instagram. You can sign up for Dead Boys at deadboysfitness.com. Not that he needs any more Instagram followers, but if you want to follow co-owner Colby Lopez, aka Seth freaking Rollins, it's at Seth Rollins WWE on Instagram, or maybe WWE Seth Rollins.
I think it's WWE Rollins.
WWE Rollins, thank you.
Yeah.
Do not follow for any of the other ones. Those are usually fake. So yeah, at WWE Rollins is Seth's official Instagram handle, and yeah, that's where you can find us.
Yeah, and I mean, really, if they want to get in touch with Dead Boys, they need to talk to you because he's got.
Sure, I
He's
mean,
got.
you try. I'm sure you could try, but I mean, will you get an answer? Probably not. So yeah, you could just reach out to me.
And even if you do, it'll probably be like, "Hey, call Josh."
Yeah,
call
reach
Josh.
out. Reach out to this guy.
Yeah, he'll get you set up and hooked up.
Yeah.
Well, man, awesome. Thank you for coming on the show. I know we've been trying to do this since semis.
Well, I
Actually,
appreciate it. I appreciate your, all your listeners, and like I said, whether it's Dead Boys Fitness or street parking or an actual affiliate, if you're out there and you're listening and you want to change for the better, I hope, and you're kind of on the fence, I hope you take that leap of faith and regardless of what it is. I don't even care if it's Zumba, whatever you need to do to motivate you to make a better version of yourself, to lose a little bit of weight, to feel a little bit healthier, maybe to eat a little bit healthier, make that move, because I'm telling you, it is extremely rewarding when you put in the hard work and you see the results.
Absolutely. And I just did I'm currently in a like a 90-day shred program with I don't know if you know Dave Lipson
Mhm.
with Thunderbro. And so I'm doing that. So I did a DEXA scan and they told me,
Oh,
they basically told me how long I have to live based on my current state.
yeah,
And
I love and I hate the DEXA scan. So
yeah,
more power to you for getting that information. No one's ever given me that information, and if I heard that information, I would probably be extremely neurotic. So
well,
I didn't know. I didn't know that was an option.
it's one of those things where they're like, your perspective time, I think they said like 76 years, or your
Oh,
perspective lifespan is 76 years, and I'm like,
why are they doing that? Just stop it.
but then I'm like, oh, well, challenge accepted. I want to go ahead and I want to. We need to beef those numbers up.
Yeah, that's
Try
that's that's too much information. Just tell me
yeah,
how fat I am or how skinny I am or how give me my body percentages. Don't guess on when I'm gonna die. DEXA scan. Good lord.
yeah. That was like the first thing that popped up. I was like, wow, we're just jumping straight to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Dude, give me the other information. Keep
Yeah.
the dead stuff to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for doing this. And dude, I will see you. I mean, or do you come down to Wadapalooza at all? Do you do that whole
That's
thing,
up
or
to
you just
that's up to them. That's up to Dylan and the gang. They want to
yeah?
pay me to come down to Wadapalooza. I'm down.
We'll call him. We'll call him. Get it going. So, but
Yeah.
man, always good to see you and talk to you. And man, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome, brother.
Awesome.